Why does time feel different in space? At first, that sounds like a poetic question, not a scientific one. Time feels different when you're bored. It feels different when you're scared. It feels different when you're in love. That's psychology, right? That's just your brain. But this question isn't about feelings in that sense. It's about something far more disturbing. Time does not just feel different in space. It is different, and not in a subtle way, not in a way you could dismiss as perception or illusion. Time itself behaves differently depending on where you are, how fast you're moving, and how gravity surrounds you. The strange part is not that physicists discovered this. The strange part is that it took so long for anyone to take it seriously, because once you see the logic behind it, you realize it couldn't have been any other way. To understand this, you have to give up a very comfortable idea. The idea that time is something universal, something that flows the same everywhere, ticking forward like a perfect cosmic clock. That idea feels so obvious that you probably never questioned it. 1 second is 1 second. A minute is a minute. Time is just time. But that intuition is wrong. Time is not a background feature of the universe. It is not a master clock hanging over reality. Time is something that emerges from how matter and energy behave. And when those behaviors change, time changes with them. Let's start with the most basic assumption you carry around without noticing. You assume that now means the same thing everywhere, that there is a single present moment shared by the entire universe. But the universe never agreed to that. Imagine two observers drifting far apart in space. No gravity, no acceleration, just motion. Each one carries a clock, perfect clocks, identical in every way. They synchronize them and then drift. As long as they stay together, everything seems fine. The clocks tick in unison. 1 second here matches 1 second there, but the moment they separate, something subtle happens. Each observer still experiences time normally. Their heartbeats feel the same. Their thoughts unfold at the same pace. Nothing feels strange locally. And that's the trap, because even though nothing feels different, time is already diverging. If one observer moves faster than the other, even slightly, their clock begins to tick at a different rate. Not because it's broken, not because it's affected by machinery, but because motion itself changes the structure of time. This isn't an illusion. It's not about measurement error. It's built into how reality works. The faster you move through space, the slower you move through time. That sentence sounds poetic. It sounds metaphorical, but it is literal. And here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. There is no absolute way to say who is really moving. Motion is relative. Each observer can claim to be at rest, yet their clocks disagree. So whose time is correct? The answer is both. Time does not exist independently of motion. It is not something you carry with you unchanged. It is something that depends on your path through the universe. This is where people often make a mistake. They think time dilation is a strange effect that happens to clocks. But clocks are not special. Clocks don't cause time to slow down. They reveal it. Every physical process slows down together. If you were moving fast enough, your clock would tick slower relative to someone else's. But so would your heartbeat, your thoughts, your aging. You would not notice anything unusual. From your perspective, everything is normal. It's only when you compare paths afterward that the difference appears. So already, the idea of a universal time has collapsed. There is no single rate at which the universe unfolds. There are many times, layered on top of one another, each tied to a specific journey through space. Now bring gravity into the picture. Gravity is usually explained as a force, something pulling objects together. But that description is a shortcut, a useful one, but not the truth. What gravity actually does is change the structure of space and time. When you are near a massive object, time slows down. Again, not psychologically, physically. A clock near a planet ticks more slowly than a clock far away from it. This has been measured, repeatedly, with extraordinary precision. And just like before, nothing feels different locally. Your thoughts don't drag. Your movements don't feel sluggish. You don't experience time as heavy or thick. Time only reveals its difference when compared. So now you have two effects doing the same thing. Motion slows time. Gravity slows time. Different causes, same result. That should make you suspicious. Because when two very different phenomena produce the same outcome, it usually means they are not really different at all. They are aspects of the same deeper structure. And they are. Space and time are not separate. They are not independent dimensions stitched together. They are a single entity, a fabric, a structure. Change one, and the other must respond. This is why time feels different in space. Not because space is empty or vast or alien, but because space is inseparable from time. The geometry of space determines the flow of time. This leads to a realization that quietly dismantles your everyday understanding of reality. Time does not flow on its own. Time flows because something is happening, because energy exists, because matter curves space, because motion traces paths. Remove those things, and time loses its meaning. This is why deep space, far from stars and planets, is not just colder or darker. It is temporally different. The rules that govern how time unfolds there are not the same as the rules near Earth. And now comes the question you should be asking. If time depends on motion and gravity, then what is time really? Is it a thing? Is it a dimension? Is it an illusion? The answer is stranger than all three. Time is a measure of change, but not just any change. It is a measure of how possible changes relate to one another. It orders events, it links causes and effects, it gives structure to the universe's unfolding, but it does not exist independently of that unfolding. Time is not the stage on which the universe acts. Time is part of the action. And once you see that, the feeling that time behaves differently in space stops being mysterious. It becomes inevitable. Because space is not a place. It is a geometry of relationships. And time is how those relationships update. Once you accept that time is inseparable from space, the next illusion to fall is the idea that time flows uniformly, like water in a river. That picture is comforting. It suggests a direction, a pace, a universal rhythm. But the universe does not provide one. There is no master clock ticking in the background. There is no cosmic metronome setting the tempo for everything that exists. Each object, each observer, each system carries its own time, shaped by how it moves and where it is. This is why astronauts experience time differently from people on Earth. Not dramatically, not in a way you'd feel in your bones, but measurably. Their clocks tick at a different rate. Their time peels away from ours ever so slightly. And this difference is not a malfunction. It is the rule working exactly as intended. To understand why, you have to let go of the idea that time is something added to space. Instead, think of time as something that emerges from how space is arranged and how energy moves within it. Imagine space as a landscape, not a physical terrain, but a geometric one. Hills, valleys, curves. When mass is present, that landscape bends. And when it bends, the paths through it change. Not just the paths objects take through space, but the paths they take through time. A clock is nothing more than a system that undergoes regular change. A vibration, an oscillation, an atomic transition. If the geometry of space-time changes how that system evolves, then the clock's ticking must change too. This is why gravity slows time. Near a massive object, the geometry is more curved. Paths through space-time are steeper. Change itself unfolds differently. It's not that gravity reaches out and grabs time, pulling it back. It's that time is woven into the same structure gravity reshapes. And now notice something subtle. You never directly experience time slowing down. You experience processes, thoughts, movements, memories. All of those processes slow together. There is no internal signal telling you that your time has changed. Time only reveals itself in comparison. This comparison is where things get strange, because comparison requires bringing two histories together. Two clocks that took different paths through space-time must be reunited, and when they are, they disagree. This disagreement is not subjective. It is physical. It shows up in measurements, in calculations, in experiments. And this leads to a deeply unsettling conclusion. There is no single, objective timeline for the universe. Events that one observer considers simultaneous are not simultaneous for another. The order of events can depend on how you move. Now is not universal. This doesn't mean reality is inconsistent. It means your intuitions were too simple. The universe does not arrange events along a single line called time. It arranges them in a structure where different observers slice that structure in different ways. Each slice feels like a present moment, but no slice has special status. The present is not a feature of the universe. It is a feature of consciousness. This is where people often get lost because they mix up experience with structure. You experience a flowing present, a sense of becoming. But physics does not describe becoming. It describes relationships between events. From the universe's perspective, all events simply are. They exist within the structure of space-time. Past and future are not different kinds of things. They are different locations in that structure. Time feels different in space because space-time itself is different there. The geometry is different. The relationships between events are different. And your experience of time rides on top of that geometry. Now consider this. If time depends on motion and gravity depend on energy, then time depends on energy. Where energy is dense, time slows. Where energy is sparse, time speeds up. Where energy changes rapidly, time behaves strangely. This is why black holes are not just objects with strong gravity. They are regions where time nearly stops relative to the outside universe. Near the event horizon, the paths through space-time tilt so severely that future-directed motion points inward. From far away, you never see anything cross the horizon. It appears frozen in time. From its own perspective, nothing special happens. Time locally feels normal. Both perspectives are correct. Again, time is local, always local. Now step back and ask a more radical question. If time can slow, stretch, and tilt, is it something fundamental at all? Or is time more like temperature, something that emerges from deeper, microscopic behavior? Temperature feels real. You feel hot and cold. But temperature is not a fundamental property of individual particles. It is a statistical description of many particles moving together. Time may be similar. At the deepest level, the universe might not flow at all. There may only be relationships between events, constraints linking possibilities. Time, as you experience it, could be an emergent ordering that appears when systems are complex enough to record information, form memories, and compare states. This would explain something profound. It would explain why the laws of physics don't care about the direction of time. Most fundamental equations work the same forward and backward. They don't distinguish past from future, and yet your experience absolutely does. You remember the past, not the future. You see causes before effects. You feel time moving forward. That direction is not written into space-time itself. It comes from entropy, from the tendency of systems to move from less probable arrangements to more probable ones, from the growth of disorder. In other words, the arrow of time is not imposed by the universe. It emerges from statistics. Time feels different in space because the conditions that govern entropy, energy flow, and interaction differ there. The deeper structure stays the same, but the way patterns form changes. So time is not a universal river, it is a local current, and space shapes its flow. Once you see this, the question is no longer why time feels different in space. The question becomes why time ever felt simple at all. You grew up in a very special region of the universe. Low speeds, moderate gravity, stable energy flows. In that regime, time behaves in a way that's easy to ignore, easy to take for granted. But venture far from those conditions, and the illusion breaks. Time stretches, time bends, time fractures into perspectives. And yet, nothing is broken. The universe is doing exactly what it always does, enforcing its rules consistently, even when your intuition can't keep up. Now there is one final idea you need to confront. If time depends on space, motion, and energy, and if there is no universal present, then the universe is not becoming in the way you think. It is not marching from past to future. It is simply existing as a structured whole. And your sense of time flowing is your way of navigating that structure. That realization is the key to everything that follows. Now that you've followed this all the way through, you can see why the phrase time feels different in space is both true and misleading. It suggests that time itself has moods, that it behaves strangely because space is strange. But what's really happening is deeper than that. Time does not exist independently and then get distorted by space. Time is part of space. They are woven together so tightly that you cannot pull one without reshaping the other. What you call time is not a universal substance flowing everywhere at the same rate. It is a local measure of how change unfolds along a particular path through the universe. Every object traces its own path. Every path has its own time. This is why there is no contradiction when two observers disagree about how much time has passed. They are not arguing about the same thing. They are measuring different paths. And the universe allows that because there is no privileged path. The mistake your intuition makes is assuming that time must be the same everywhere for reality to be coherent. But coherence does not require uniformity. It requires consistency. And the rules of space-time are perfectly consistent. They simply aren't simple. Once you accept that, a great deal of confusion evaporates. Time dilation is no longer a weird effect that happens out there in space. It's a natural consequence of how reality is structured. The universe does not contain time. The universe is space-time. And you are not moving through time as a passenger. You are embedded in it, tracing the world line that connects events into a personal history. That history feels like a flowing present because your brain is built to process information sequentially. It remembers previous states and compares them to the current one. That comparison creates the sensation of passage. But the passage is not in the universe. It is in you. From the universe's perspective, there is no moving now. There is only a vast network of events, all related, all constrained, all consistent. Past and future are not special categories. They are directions within the structure. This is why physics never talks about the present moment. There is no place in the equations for it. The equations describe relationships, not experience. And yet your experience is real. It is not an illusion in the sense of being false. It is an emergent feature of how complex systems interact with space-time. Just like temperature, pressure, or solidity, time as experienced arises when many degrees of freedom cooperate. So when astronauts say time feels different in space, what they are really touching is this deeper truth. Space-time does not treat all paths equally. The universe does not promise a single shared rhythm. Near Earth, under familiar conditions, those differences are small. They hide, they feel negligible, but they are always there. Take a different path, move faster, fall deeper into gravity, travel farther from mass, and the hidden structure reveals itself. Time stretches, clocks diverge, now fractures, and yet nothing mystical is happening. No laws are breaking. Reality is not malfunctioning. You are simply seeing the universe more honestly. This understanding changes how you think about everything from aging to cosmology. It tells you that the future is not a place the universe is heading toward. It is a region of space-time not yet connected to your current state by events. It tells you that the past is not gone. It is simply elsewhere in the structure. And it tells you something even more unsettling and beautiful. Your life is not a thing moving forward in time. It is a pattern extended through space-time. Every moment of your existence is laid out within that pattern. The reason you experience them in sequence is not because time flows, but because your consciousness is a process that depends on entropy increasing, memories forming, and information updating. Time feels different in space because space-time is different there. The relationships that define change are different, and your experience rides on top of those relationships. Once you truly absorb this, the universe stops feeling like a machine ticking forward second by second. It starts to feel like a vast, interconnected structure where everything that happens is placed, not pushed. Nothing is rushing into the future. Nothing is leaving the past behind. There is only the structure and the paths within it. And you are one of those paths. And now, at the very end, you can see why this question reaches so far beyond astronauts, clocks, or distant planets. It forces you to confront something you usually never question: what it even means for something to exist in time. You instinctively think of yourself as something that persists while time passes, as if you are standing still and time is moving around you. But that picture is backwards. You are not in time. You are made of time. Every thought you have, every memory you carry, every decision you make is an arrangement of events ordered in a particular way. Remove that ordering, and there is no you, no awareness, no experience. Time is not something added to your life. It is the structure that allows your life to have form at all. And that structure is not uniform across the universe. When you imagine deep space, far from stars, far from planets, you imagine emptiness. But emptiness is not the right word. What changes out there is not the absence of things, but the absence of curvature, energy density, and interaction. Fewer interactions mean fewer constraints. Fewer constraints mean time unfolds differently, not faster in a dramatic sense, not slower in a way you could feel, but differently in how events relate, how histories align, how clocks compare when paths cross again. This is why time feels strange when you really think about space. Because space-time is not built to satisfy human intuition. It is built to satisfy consistency, and consistency does not require a single flow. It only requires that when paths meet, the accounting works out. That's why relativity is so unforgiving and so beautiful. It allows every observer their own time, but it never allows contradictions. No matter how paths twist, bend, or stretch, the structure holds. Now think about how strange that is from a human point of view. You live your entire life believing that the present moment is something objective, that it exists independently of you, that the universe shares it with you, but the universe does not recognize the present. There is no global now sweeping across galaxies. There is no universal moment where everything pauses together. The present is a feature of minds, not of space-time. Your brain constructs it because it needs to. Because memory, prediction, and action require a sense of immediacy. Without it, you could not function. But that does not mean the universe shares it. This realization often feels unsettling at first, because it seems to rob time of its reality. But it does the opposite. It makes time more real, not less. Time is not an illusion. It is not fake. It is just not fundamental. It is an emergent order arising from how events constrain one another, how energy flows, how entropy grows. And once you accept that, you stop asking why time feels different in space. Of course it does. Why wouldn't it? Space is not empty. It is structured. And structure shapes change. Near Earth, you live in a gentle region of that structure. Moderate gravity, low speeds, high interaction. Time there behaves politely. It feels uniform. It feels obvious. But that is not because time is simple. It is because you are sheltered from its complexity. Move far enough. Move fast enough. Fall deep enough, and the shelter disappears. Time stretches. Time tilts. Time fragments into perspectives. Yet through all of this, one thing never breaks. Cause still leads to effect. Energy is still conserved. Reality remains coherent. It just stops pretending to match your intuitions. This is why Feynman loved these ideas so deeply, not because they were weird, but because they were honest. They showed that the universe does not bend itself to human comfort. It bends itself to consistency. And that consistency is astonishing. So the next time you hear someone say that time feels different in space, understand what they are really touching. They are brushing against the fact that the universe does not run on a single clock. That reality does not unfold frame by frame. That existence is not a procession, but a structure. You are not carried forward by time. You trace a path through space-time. That path has length. That length is what you call time. And every object, every particle, every observer has its own. This does not isolate you. It connects you more deeply to everything else. Because all paths exist within the same structure, governed by the same rules, different rhythms, same universe. Time feels different in space because space-time is not a backdrop. It is the fabric of how things can happen at all. Once you see that, you stop thinking of time as something slipping away from you. Instead, you begin to see your life as something extended, placed carefully within the universe's geometry. Not rushing, not vanishing. Simply existing. one ordered event at a time, and that understanding doesn't make the universe colder. It makes it far more intimate. If this changed the way you think about time, even slightly, leave a comment with the word time. I want to know how far your perspective shifted. If this is the kind of explanation that makes you stop and stare at the universe for a minute, subscribe. Every video here is built to do exactly that.